I want to return today to a series that I started a couple of months back, looking at how you can obtain as much music from a given year as possible in as few releases as possible. Now, I got up to 1962 before taking a break, and so we're going to carry on with 63. Now, as it turns out, obtaining the music from 1963 in 2025 is actually fairly straightforward. So I want to do this year in a different way to what I've done in the past. What we're going to do today is look at the releases which came out in 1963, or at least take a look at some interesting variations on those releases. Then we'll turn to the sessions, and then also take a look at something which happened in the recording career of Elvis in 1963 that could have changed the very way that he made music. Anyway, we'll get to that in a few minutes. First of all, let's go through the singles which came out in 63. First, we had One Broken Heart for Sale from the movie It Happened at the World's Fair. Now, that goes back to 1962. Obviously, the releases which come out at the beginning of the year tend to be ones that had been recorded the previous year. And it was not until June 1963 that we got the first new single, which was Devil in Disguise. Now, I've actually got an EP here from France, which contains both songs. There's One Broken Heart for Sale on side one with Relax, and then on the second side you've got Devil in Disguise with its single B-side, Please Don't Drag That String Around. There's the back. This is a really nice clean copy, as you can see. EPs were very much alive and well, it seems, in Europe in 1963. Not only the French, but the Germans were releasing them as well. And I do like the design of these covers, because they've even gone to the trouble of printing the title down there on the spine. Very, very stylish blue label. I do like the French labels. Earlier, I believe some of their records were released with yellow labels, which are also really, really cool. This one has on the back here 963 printed at the bottom there, so I'm guessing that's the printing date, September 1963. I've got a Japanese single copy of Devil in Disguise. This is a very, very common single. Got to #1 in Japan, but this is a absolutely pristine copy. If you do want to get a copy of this and you want to make sure you get an early copy, there is a fairly safe way to guarantee you're going to get an early copy by looking at the company sleeve. If you get a copy with a brown sleeve, the chances are it's an early pressing. If you see one with a red, white and blue sleeve, it's more likely to be a slightly later pressing. And what they tended to do in the 60s in Japan with the more popular titles, or the titles that they figured would sell more, they printed 4-page inserts to go with the single. At the end of the year, we got Bossa Nova Baby in October in America. I'll just show you the Japanese release. Again, this is one that they anticipated would sell quite well because it had a 4-page or a fold-out insert. This one's had a coupon cut off the top there. It's typical Japanese insert with the liner notes in Japanese and then the lyrics in English. I've also got another EP from Europe. This one's a German EP. I guess this came out in 64, but I'll show it to you anyway. It's quite unusual to see this image with a different color to the left and right, white instead of green. And there are the tracks, 4 songs from the film. And this even comes with its own German inner sleeve. There's the label. As far as the albums went, we got 3 albums that year, which is a lot by anyone's standards. The first one was in April. It Happened at the World's Fair. This is a UK copy. I've got 3 UK copies. I've got an original mono one and an original stereo, both with the silver spot label. And then this one that I'm showing you now is from 1965 with the red spot label. This one's a little bit more difficult to obtain. Then we got a compilation album of older material from the early 1960s. In August, Elvis's Golden Records Volume 3. This is a Japanese copy from 1973 that is worth having because it came with a poster like that. 24 by 12 inch poster. There were 20 albums released this way, and all of them have got the catalogue number there in the bottom. Some of them were taken by Japanese photographers, and some of them, like this one here, came from the Elvis on Tour movie. And they've all got the RCA logo in the bottom corner there. And then, towards the end of the year, in November, in America, we got the Fun in Acapulco album. And here's a Japanese copy. Very common stereo cover, but this one is actually, this is a test pressing, and test pressings usually came like this, plain white labels. I'm not sure if you can see that there, but it's got the catalogue number stamped on one side and the other side is blank, and that's often how they were. Sometimes they might have the letter A stamped on one side, and sometimes you might get a copy with Elvis's name written on it by somebody, but that's basically how they came. Right, let's turn to the sessions from 1963. The first thing Elvis did in 1963 in the studio was record the soundtrack for the Fun in Acapulco movie. It was a Paramount Hal Wallis movie, and they tended to have pretty good soundtracks. Fun in Acapulco is no exception. It's a pretty good soundtrack in my opinion. Now, if you're a big Fun in Acapulco fan and you want to get some music from the movie in 2025, then the best thing you can do really is go all out and get the FTD Fun in Acapulco Sessions, a 3 CD set which came out in 2019. It has the original album, including the bonus songs, and then all outtakes in chronological order and all takes in sequential order. It's even got a song on there called Malagina, but sadly it's not some long lost classic. It's just an instrumental that Elvis never recorded a vocal for. This is an early FTD Sessions set, so you can see they're still using that tape box design. It comes with the usual booklet and case for the CDs, but we won't get into that now. There are videos out there if you want to find out more about this particular set. Then in May that year, over 2 nights in May, Elvis recorded 14 songs for, well, presumably for an album which never came out. The songs in question were released on an album many years later. This album here, For the Asking. This came out in 1990 in Germany, and it's not cheap to pick up anymore. It's got 15 songs because it also includes It Hurts Me, which was recorded in 1964. The other 14 songs were all done originally in 1963 in May. Elvis actually re-recorded Memphis, Tennessee and Ask Me in 64. So presumably this was these songs were recorded with an album in mind. But as we saw, in the summer of 63, RCA brought out Golden Records Volume 3. So in the end, a lot of the songs on this album ended up being used as filler material on soundtrack albums and compilation albums like Gold Records Volume 4 and Elvis for Everyone. And quite a few of them were released as singles as well. But more than half of them were released as bonus songs on the soundtrack albums. So you can get all those songs in one place, and with all the outtakes again released as a session set by FTD once again. This came out in 2022. It's a fairly recent one. So by now you can see they've lost the tape box covers. They still keep the same design on the back. The way that they've actually sequenced the first part of the set is quite interesting because they've ordered the songs in the order that they were released. So the first two you get there's Devil in Disguise and Please Don't Drag That String Around, which came out in June '63 as a single. The last song to come out was in May 1968, which is Western Union, which is down here, track 15 on CD1, released on the Speedway album. And then we get into the outtakes. Once again, all in order, and all takes, I think all takes are on there. I'm not sure if there's any missing dialogue, but I'm pretty sure you get all the music on there. So that's pretty much all you need for those sessions. Then in July 1963, Elvis recorded the soundtrack for the Viva Las Vegas movie. Now, many fans lament the fact that there's no LP. Well, at the time, there was no LP for Viva Las Vegas. They just released a EP and a single. We'll get onto those maybe in a future video, but these days you can get all the music in one place, and that is, once again, you guessed it, it's a sessions set. The Follow That Dream Viva Las Vegas sessions, released in 2018. 2018, yeah. I think this was the first one they released. This one is a bit of a controversial one because of the way that they sequenced the songs. Unlike subsequent sessions sets, what they did here after the masters is they tried to put the outtakes in some kind of listenable order, I suppose, listener-friendly order. At the end of disc 1, you've got a bunch of first takes. Then you've got a bunch of outtakes on disc 2, and then we've got the movie versions, and then we go back to more outtakes. But I think people who buy something as hardcore as a session set, they don't want the songs ordered like that. They want them in chronological order with all the takes in the correct order. So to take one song, Nightlife, which took quite a few takes to get right, on disc 1 you've got Nightlife take 2, which was the first complete version. Then if you go to disc 2, at the start there, you've got Nightlife takes 1 and 3, and then takes 4 to 8. And then on disc 3, tracks 7, 8, 9 are all the other takes of Nightlife. So if you want to get a sense of how the song develops, you're going to have to, basically transfer the songs onto your hard drive and listen to them one by one that way. So it's a bit of an unfortunate way to sequence the tracks on this particular release. And some people are not too complimentary about the sound of this release as well. But anyway, there it is. That's where all the Viva Las Vegas music is. Finally, in 1963, Elvis recorded the soundtrack for the Kissing Cousins album. A couple of nights at the end of September, early October. However, Elvis had a cold on the first night, so he wasn't able to record anything. And in fact, he didn't turn up for the second night either. So over the first 2 nights, the band recorded the instrumental tracks for all the songs that would appear in the film. And then Elvis overdubbed all his vocals a few days later on October the 10th, I think. This could actually have been a very significant change in the recording career of Elvis, because had he enjoyed doing it that way, he may have decided to do it that way every single time from that point on. Now, it wasn't in fact the first time Elvis had overdubbed his vocals. I think the first time he did it was back in '57 when he recorded Baby I Don't Care. Of course, he famously played the bass in place of Bill Black, and then he had to record the vocals later. And in fact, he'd even overdubbed some vocals for the previous movie, Viva Las Vegas, in that same year, 1963. But Elvis and the band were actually working pretty quickly during Kissing Cousins. The band, they took 8 takes maximum over one song, and many of the other songs they did in far fewer takes, just 1 or 2 takes in some cases. And Elvis himself only required 1 night's work. The song that took him the most time was Catchin' On Fast, which took 7 takes. And again, Elvis did quite a few songs in 1 or 2 takes. So it's quite possible that Elvis could have said, you know what, I quite like working this way. Let's do this every time from now on. And of course, Elvis would occasionally in the future overdub his vocals onto pre-recorded tracks, either through illness or because on some occasions he just didn't want to record for one reason or another. But in my opinion, I'm glad that he kept on recording in that same old way that he'd always done, making music with the band in the studio, take by take. I think the results are much more satisfying that way than what we have in the overdubbed sessions. Anyway, if you do want to get the Kissing Cousins music, or as much of it as possible, you're going to have to get the FTD Kissing Cousins Classic Album CD. There is no sessions release for Kissing Cousins. There may never be one because, as I say, Elvis recorded his vocals separately to the band. The Kissing Cousins FTD CD, the Classic Album CD, is worth checking out. It's probably going to cost you a lot of money though these days. There are a couple of versions on there of songs which are extended versions, or rather unedited versions. Catch It On Fast. There's a version of Catch It On Fast on there which has an extra 30 seconds. But the best song for me on that CD is the unedited version of Kissing Cousins No. 2. You get an extra minute. I'm not a big fan of the Kissing Cousins album, if I'm honest, but I do like Kissing Cousins No. 2. So that's definitely worth hearing. I think that's about it for 1963. I'll look into the 64 sessions at some point and see what happened, and see how you can get the music. But that's it for this video. What do you think of the music Elvis made in 1963? Do let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Cheers.